Greetings and salutations. How do you like my new intro? Pretty cool, huh? Well, I just put it together, probably spent more time on it than I really needed to. So I really intended just to make a quick, well, semi-quick recording. Seems like I've never always that quick. But I wanted to fill in today for, get myself positioned correctly. I wanted to fill in today because next Wednesday is my surgery for deep brain stimulation, otherwise abbreviated to DBS. So when we say DBS, that's what we're talking about. And I've been talking about that a lot recently, and right now it seems kind of surreal to think that I'm actually going to be encountering DBS. So it is happening, surprisingly enough. It's actually going to happen. And hopefully I'll come out of this a brand new man, which of course is why we're doing this, because if it doesn't have that hope of expectation, there's not much point going to all this risk and money to do this. But I mentioned before, I'm planning on doing a daily entry on this blog about my experiences with surgery and the recovery period, so that people can get an idea of what somebody going through deep brain stimulation goes through. And also you get to first-hand, upfront look at how my symptoms improve and how I improve, because you'll be able to see with your own eyes and hear with your own ears any improvements in my control, smoothness, loudness, and that kind of thing, which probably won't affect my voice a whole lot, other than as it helps my diaphragm muscles to work better. So we will see on that front. But the only day I'm planning on doing a daily post on this blog from starting next Monday, which would be the 25th, and going through to hopefully about October 10th, which is when I do my first programming session with my neurologist. And when that happens, we'll see whether I feel like there's enough interest and new discoveries yet to occur, continue going on after that. But at least I'm going to try and take it up through October 10th, give you a rundown after my first day of programming, what happens. And there may be some days mixed in there where there's really not much new to report, rather than throwing a video out saying all that. I'll just put a text entry on the blog saying there's nothing new to report today. Pretty much the same as it was the day before that, blah blah blah. But I wanted to try to do a video as much as possible. And the only exception to that may be that on the day of the surgery, September 27th, I'll be in the ICU recovering, and I, of course, have no clue how I'll be at that point. But if at all possible, I will try at least get to my phone, which I can do a text blog on that. And it's possible, with the help of my wife, that we may actually get to do a Facebook live feed that night, so you can see me laying in my bed and all that good stuff at the hospital, which everybody just enjoys so much looking at. Look at the poor sucker sitting in the bed. But that's all the plan at this point. So But what I mainly wanted to do today was to establish a baseline. Of where I'm at right now with my symptoms and what I'm hoping DBS will fix and work on. And so I wanted to establish those kind of medications that I'm on currently, how much I'm taking, and the symptoms that I am currently experiencing that I hope DBS will take care of. So let's get on with it, shall we? First off, I want to go over my medications real quick. I'm on levodopa-carbidopa, which is a generic form of what's known as Sinemet. That is currently a 250/25 milligram pill, which means 250 milligrams of levodopa and 25 milligrams of carbidopa. And that's my main source of additional dopamine. The levodopa gets into the brain, goes through the blood-brain barrier, say that fast 5 times, and converts to dopamine while it's in there, and then your brain's able to use that for the lack of dopamine that it didn't have before. That's the primary medication used for Parkinson's. Most anything else is supplemental to that. And then I'm also on, I take those levodopa pills 4 times a day. One of those 250/25 milligram pills 4 times a day. And I also take pramipexole, which is a generic form of Mirapax, a dopamine agonist. And that basically promotes dopamine production within your brain. A lot of times, initially, when somebody gets on Parkinson's medications, sometimes that'll be one of the first things they'll prescribe a person, because it can help the brain to generate its own, which is better than throwing it in there extra, because then you don't have to worry about dyskinesias as much, which I'll explain a little bit later what that is if you're not aware. So the only other thing I'm currently taking is a supplement, TUCDA, and I've gone over how to pronounce this, the full name of this, which is, see if I can get this right, tirasidolic acid. I don't know, I didn't say that right. Tirasidolic acid, anyway. It's something like that. And I've gone over it several times, but apparently it's not sticking exactly how you pronounce that. But TUCDA is the way they always abbreviate it. And I did a recent post on that, which you can look back, text post, so you can look back and see why I'm taking that and what it's doing to help. But those are the 3 main Parkinson's meds I'm taking currently. I was taking selegiline, which is a MyoB inhibitor, which prevents your dopamine from leaving your system and getting flushed out by inhibiting one of the enzymes that does that. So it just allows your dopamine to stay in your brain longer. But I had to get that one out of the way because it takes about 2 weeks for it to exit and lose its effect. And not only did I have to do that so that I won't have any significant drugs, Parkinson's medications left in my system the day I have DBS surgery next Wednesday, but I also, selegiline can react to some general anesthesia, so I had to make sure that that was not going to be present. And it didn't react with my anesthesia for my MRI. So I think I'm good to go on that. But I'm not taking that now. I'm pretty much off of it. And I haven't noticed symptomatic worsening being off of it, but I expect some of that to happen. It may not have happened fully yet. Sometimes that can take a few weeks before I feel it. So that's the medications I'm on right now. And so hopefully the goal is with DBS is that I'll be able to greatly reduce the amount I'm taking of that, and or to get rid of them totally would be ideal, but I don't know if it's going to be that effective. And there's other symptoms that DBS can't deal with, non-motor related symptoms, that I may still have to take some dopamine for. So we'll see. That all gets factored out when DBS is turned on and gets programmed to find out how much it's going to help me out. So that's where I'm at on medication, and you'll be able to tell how much I'm able to do that. Just to give you an example, when I first started levodopa-carbidopa, the main drug, I was taking 100 milligram pills 3 times a day. And initially, that was enough to be a significant help. But as you can see, as symptoms get worse, as your brain cells, more of your brain cells die off, so you can store less dopamine in your brain and you can produce less dopamine in your brain, then having to throw more in there to compensate for that. And that creates its own set of problems as well. So under the symptoms, I'm only going to mention the symptoms that DBS will be expected to have an impact on. Where it won't have an impact is on non-motor symptoms like constipation, voice volume, drooling, which has happened to me before, lack of smell, which I haven't had, but that's often a common first symptom of Parkinson's, sinus drainage, which I've always had ever since my symptoms with Parkinson's show up. Most people, even a lot of doctors, don't know that that is a Parkinson's symptom. I just thought it was allergy or something, but actually allergy medicines don't really help with it at all. And it started at the same time that my significant symptoms started showing up. So in general, one of the issues that DBS I'm hoping, expecting to resolve is what I call a symptomatic roller coaster. I generally take the main medicine 4 times a day, about 4 hours apart, normally at 8 a.m., 12 noon, 4 p.m., and 8 p.m. Once I go to sleep, I don't need the medication because the tremors go away when you fall asleep. Unlike an essential tremor, which would stick with you after you're sleeping, and maybe if they're bad enough, keep you awake or wake you up. But if sleep disorder is also a non-motor symptom that many Parkinson's patients, I haven't had any problem getting to sleep, luckily. I can usually fall asleep pretty easily and quickly. But for some Parkinson's patients, that's not a very easy thing to have happen. So I've been fortunate in that area. So my symptoms take a nap when I do. In fact, dopamine can actually build up in your brain while you're sleeping, which is why a lot of Parkinson's patients are better in the mornings than they are in the evenings, because they kind of used up whatever supply of dopamine has been built up in the brain by that point. During each dose, right now, the cycle that I experience goes something like this. The first hour, I'm waiting for the medication to kick in. So whatever off time I'm experienced from my last dose continues on through most of the first hour after I take a dose of medication. So the first hour, a lot of times I'm still having symptoms as an off time. Second hour and the third hour are the times I feel most normal. I never really totally get rid of all the symptoms, but at least I'm fairly functional. I can dance and put some energy into it. I can play pickleball really well. I don't have anything trying to hold me back as much. So I have about an hour and a half to 2 hours of time there with each dose that I feel somewhat able to do what I want to do and accomplish effectively. Then about the beginning of the end of the third hour and starting into the fourth hour of the dose, right now, I start getting some dyskinesia at that point. Now what I get now is called wearing off dyskinesia. It's when dyskinesias you get when the medicine starts to wear off. I used to have what is called peak dyskinesia, which is when your medicine is at its peak and strongest in your system. You can get dyskinesia at that point. I understand the peak dyskinesia because basically you have so much dopamine in your system that it overexcites the nervous system. It creates involuntary movements, which are called dyskinesias. But I'm not sure I totally comprehend the mechanism when the dopamine's on the downcline. But that's what I experience now, is when the medicine starts to wear off, then I get these uncontrolled movements with my head bobbing and my left leg wanting to buckle out all the time. And it's basically all my neck muscles and my facial muscles grow tense. I'm always afraid sometimes that people think I'm growling at them or something like that. But you can see, even though I don't have dyskinesia at this moment, I'm not as smooth as I could be. And my medications right now are basically working at a decent pace at this point. I'm probably, at this point in my dose, at one of my best points. So you can see, even at that point, I'm still kind of, can be wiggly and not kosher. So I have this roller coaster every 4 hours with symptoms coming in and then having the dyskinesia. Then by the end of the fourth hour, I'm going into an off state, which can be the increase in my tremors in my hands and that kind of thing. Now, the interesting thing is that this varies somewhat. As I said, when I started taking TCDA, a lot of that off time smoothed out a bit, and it's not as drastic now as it was before. But sometimes it can be pretty rough. It just depends on what's going on, what I've been eating, how much sleep I've got, and that kind of thing. Any number of factors. But even when I'm on, I'm not totally symptomless. So that's, in general, one of the things that DBS is hopefully going to help me get off of, is the medication roller coaster. And I can just be on, turn myself on, and I'm just on all day. And that would be really great if that's the level of symptomatic relief I get to. But now specific symptoms. One symptom that it should take care of is dystonia. This is actually the first symptom that I had back in 2012 was dystonia, which is when your muscles tighten and uncontrollably and just sit there and clench your hand. And in my case, it made it to where these fingers here would not move very smoothly. As you can see right now, thanks to the medication, they're not too bad. I can type at a halfway decent rate of speed with it. But that was what I first noticed, was clamping on the steering wheel uncontrollably. And as the year progressed, 2012, that got worse to the point where my typing speed dropped down to half of what it used to be. Now luckily, to date, my right arm has not been affected by that. And it's just mainly all in my left arm. And if I get off of medications for very long, this arm becomes practically useless. This is back in 2014. I had 5 days that I was off medication because I kind of wanted to see where I was at that point. And by the 5th day, this arm couldn't do hardly anything with it. Typing would be like, because it was all stiff and painful. That's when I decided, okay, this experiment's over. We're going to get back on the medication. So hopefully this will take care of the dystonia and I won't need the dopamine for that. But it's one of the things that's expected to take care of. The other thing is what everybody thinks of when they think of Parkinson's is tremors. And not everybody that has Parkinson's has a tremor, believe it or not. Matter of fact, there's really no one single symptom that you have to have in Parkinson's. Probably the most common and pervasive symptom is actually slowness, where everything slows down to a crawl for a Parkinson's patient. And of course that can be offset by exercise, but tremors is the one people most often think of when they think of Parkinson's, because it's a pretty widespread symptom and most Parkinson's patients get it. In my case, it started on my left hand. That same year, by the end of the year, I was having a slight tremor, and then by 2013, it was worse. So I went to the doctor, and you know the rest of the story. Then in 2014, my symptoms, tremors from my left hand, started happening in my right hand. Well, interestingly enough, my right hand, as far as tremors, has gotten worse than my left hand. So much so that if I have a cup of tea or coffee or something I'm wanting to carry from the kitchen back to my desk, and I don't have a way to cover it, I want to carry it with my left hand, not my right. My right hand's more likely at some point walking down the hall to start shaking the juices, shaking everything out of the cup, which has happened 1 or 2 times. But I try to be careful of that. So one of the interesting things is the tremors in Parkinson's are called resting tremors. Basically means when you're not doing something with them is when the tremors are most predominant. And by doing something, I mean you're actively moving your hand, like when I'm swinging rackets in pickleball. People might see me tremoring as I'm holding the racket still, but then when I go to swing it, I don't have any problems. And I'm able to hit an accurate shot most of the time. Sometimes people would say maybe not as accurate as they'd like. But when I'm holding something, like I hold my cell phone, and this is why I don't like to put it on my ear, because I can't really comfortably hold it to my ear very effectively, very easily. And then my head starts bobbing, and right now, because my meds are on, it's not horribly terrible, but you can tell it's a little bit trimmer under the surface, so to speak. Well, as my meds start to wear off, that gets a whole lot worse. And anytime I try to hold a position like in yoga or Tai Chi, where you're doing the tree thing, you just got to sit there and be still. See, right now I can hold it for a little while, but eventually it'll start becoming hard to do. But that's because my meds are on at the moment. So the tremors in my right hand got worse, and that'll be probably one of the reasons why they want me to be off my meds when they do the DBS surgery. It's one of the ways they know that they've got the lead in the right spot is your hand stops tremoring. And so that will, but I don't look forward to that part, because it also means I don't think it'll take 5 days for my left arm to get to the bad state it was in previously. So the third trait or symptom is gait. Overall, my gait isn't too bad for someone 5 years into this disease. Part of that is that I started a little earlier than most people, as a rule, who start showing signs of Parkinson's early in life, like in the 30s or 40s, or even some cases late 20s, progress much slower initially. So like Michael J. Fox, who picked up Parkinson's, started showing symptoms in his late 20s, I think it was. He went for several years on the lower doses of medication. As he's grown older, it's gradually gotten worse for him. So 5 years for Michael J. Fox into his symptoms, he would be nowhere near where I'm at now. Likewise, somebody who starts showing symptoms in their 60s or 70s or older, or progress at a much more rapid rate than somebody who gets it earlier. So I'm kind of in the middle of that stack. I'm considered young onset Parkinson's because I got it when I was 50. Or the symptoms started showing up when I was 50, to be more accurate. And so most people would consider that young onset, but it's kind of right on the border of that. Some people don't. And consequently, if you started in your 60, your 5-year mark is probably different than mine. That said, I think a lot of the reason I'm not further along, because the next stage that I have in Parkinson's is what's called stage 3. And that's when you start having trouble with your balance. You start freezing when you're walking. You try to walk and it's like your foot won't move. And also that's a time when falls can happen more easily. Well, on gait and balance, which is the fourth symptom I was going to talk about, I'm not real bad. I can tell they're off. There's times when I'm walking that I feel like I'm plodding, especially when I want to plod forward, and I'm not walking as smoothly when my medications are off. But most of the neurologists and doctors that have watched me walk are surprised how well I am doing with that. And the main reason for that, I believe, is because of the exercise. I think it's the exercise that's kept me from moving into stage 3 yet. And because when you're doing Zumba 4 times a week and teaching a class of Zumba, you get plenty of workout as far as coordination and doing big movements, which are important in Parkinson's, and you also get a lot of balance practice because you're moving in various ways, a lot of times popping up on one leg, bouncing around, things like that. So that's, my gait and my balance are not horrible yet, but I can tell that they're not where I used to be with it before I got Parkinson's. So I'm hoping to see how much that'll help in both the gait and the balance issues. Related to that is also posture. When I'm in my off states, my head tends to want to bend down, and people, I know my priest one time kind of tried to get out under me because my head was pointing downward more, and it just happens. Most time I notice it is at night when I'm brushing my teeth. A lot of times I've already taken my last dose for the day, and it is pretty much worn off, and so I'm sitting there brushing my teeth, and my head wants to go down like this, and everything wants to come out of my mouth instead of holding it up like this. Even now, I have to kind of force my head up a bit. But that gets even worse when it's there, and sometimes when I'm talking to people, I'm starting to look down because of that. So posture is another issue. The sixth and final symptom that this is hoping to take care of isn't really what you call a symptom of Parkinson's, but as I mentioned before, the dyskinesia that you get from this as a side effect from the medication of the uncontrolled movements, mostly in my head, tightening in my facial muscles and neck muscles. But it's my expectation and hope that I'll either be able to totally get off my medications or greatly reduce them to the point that I won't be having to throw as much dopamine into my system, which is what causes the dyskinesias. So if I get that down significantly, then I should have less dyskinesia as I go through the day. Eventually, DBS just addresses the symptoms of the disease. It doesn't slow it down one bit. It just allows you to replace your medications or greatly reduce the amount you're taking, which can add on more productive years, and it gives you a more straight on state as opposed to the little roller coaster that I described earlier. So that's where I'm at, my medications and my symptoms, and I'm hoping DBS will affect in a positive way. Now we just have to go through the surgery next week and see how that happens. So for now, that's all, and I will see you Monday night if I don't have any reason to post another video before then. Thank you very much.